All right, Mets fans, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. We do have some breaking news. A Mets fan's reaction to the division rival Atlanta Braves signing Robert Suarez, who was thought of as a Mets target most recently after striking out on Edwin Diaz, is now heading to the Atlanta Braves on a brand new 3-year deal, which looks eerily similar to the deal that Devin Williams just got over a week ago with the New York Mets. If you are here, this is a little bit of a late lunchtime stream. Wanted to kind of prop this up, this conversation, get a little bit of your thoughts and opinions as viewers at home and collective Mets fans. How are we feeling about the New York Mets losing out on another potential target? You know, Suarez has been thought of all offseason long as the plan B option, not only to the New York Mets, but also the Toronto Blue Jays if Edwin Diaz wasn't an option. And now that he's not, having gone to the Dodgers on his own 3-year deal, and now the Braves have a very good back end of their bullpen with Raisel Iglesias and Robert Suarez. And you see the deal parameters here from both Will Salmon and Ken Rosenthal. Reliever Robert Suarez and the Braves are in agreement on a 3-year, $45 million deal. There are no deferments in this deal for Suarez, and Jeff Passan was on it first. And Ken Rosenthal follows this up by giving a little bit of an outlook on what we should expect in the NL East when they play the Braves, is that Robert Suarez signed this deal to be a setup guy to Iglesias, who had not really a fantastic season with the Braves last season, 2025. It was kind of a strange season. I wouldn't even know how to characterize it, but he's been a staple for quite some time in the back end of that Braves bullpen, and now he has a little bit of help. And what doesn't sit right with me in this scenario is that if you were willing to go 3 years and $66 million, right? $22 million per for Edwin Diaz, and you brought in Devin Williams and essentially had the conversation asking him if he was willing to be a setup guy himself, why would you not even attempt? And maybe the Mets did attempt to get a guy like Suarez. Maybe they just wanted to go 2 years. I don't know. We don't have any reports. I'm sure Will Salmon and whoever else is going to come out with the report saying the Mets either made an offer to Suarez or they didn't. But I can't fathom the Mets not being in on this type of structure, given that Devin Williams, in his mind, was set on Edwin Diaz coming back. He even said if he was a betting man, then he thought Edwin Diaz was coming back. And so I'm under the assumption that the conversations were, Devin Williams, you will be our setup guy. That is the most likeliest of outcomes this offseason going into 2026. I'm just at a loss for words. You know, the Phillies got their guy. They went above and beyond to go get Kyle Schwarber and retain him, even though Kyle Schwarber had the same offer on the table with the Orioles, which we know as of yesterday, the Orioles decided to reallocate to Pete Alonso, and now Alonso is a Baltimore Oriole. Excuse me. And the Dodgers went above and beyond to get Edwin Diaz. And now the Braves get richer as well, and now they get Robert Suarez. Everybody in the NL is either doing what it takes to retain their guys or get better. And that's the common theme that we have seen. And as I've mentioned, David Stearns definitely has a plan. I don't think that anything about his plan is revolving and surrounding 2026. I have very serious doubts about that, because now there is a very big uphill battle to climb to sell us Mets fans that you are trying to seriously win in 2026. This is a debacle. This is a debacle. You know, I would have felt a lot better losing out on Edwin Diaz if they made the conscious effort to go ahead and get a guy like Suarez. And now we're sitting here with David Stearns going out there and telling us that he believes in Devin Williams being the Mets closer in 2026. Because forget about the overall production in his first season in New York with the Yankees. According to David Stearns, all of the advanced metrics, which is not even true, by the way, if you take a look at his Baseball Savant page, all of the advanced metrics and the stuff of his pitches, the two pitches, the four-seamer and the changeup, the airbender, told David Stearns that he still has what it takes to close at a high level in Queens. I'm not sure I buy it. I'm not sure I buy it. So getting into the chat here, I know Joel's popping off. I definitely appreciate it. We got Mike in the chat as well. The Mets probably offered a half of a year deal. Oh, Mike says we're cooked. Mike says we're cooked. Yeah, this is my reaction. Not good. Not a good reaction, as you can tell, the way that I'm starting off this stream. If you guys have missed all the latest content on the channel, make sure to check it out. I've been talking about the trade rumors and the interest of the Mets surrounding Wilson Contreras, and most notably within the past, hour and a half, I dropped a video about Ramon Laureano. Yeah, this is not good. This is not good. The names that we are talking about that the Mets are potentially in on, they're good, they're serviceable, albeit they're a little bit older, and they're not needle movers for this team. So I really do think what we are looking at here, and I will reiterate this, and everything that David Stearns is doing this offseason is telling us Mets fans, indirectly, might I add, because David Stearns will never go out there and just tell us the truth. That is not David Stearns' MO. He's preparing, and he's already started to gut this team. He is resetting this team. Now, the other conversation here, and I repeat, I will not go as far as to say this as a fact, but we are starting to get a sense. I made, after the Devin Williams acquisition, I made a little bit of a calculation per Fangraphs what the New York Mets are at payroll-wise. And after the Devin Williams signing, they are at $277 million. We know the luxury tax tiers of the MLB, right? And I think the first tier to go into that luxury tax threshold, the first tier is like $243 million, somewhere around there. So the New York Mets are a little bit over $30 million from that first tier. Are they trying to reset the luxury tax, which they've been stuck in for quite some time? Everybody has been under the assumption that that is not true, and that can't be because Steve Cohen is the owner. But with Senga and McNeil being on the trade block, given what we've seen from David Stearns, I have no doubt that they are getting moved. I'm not sure if the Mets are going to have to eat any of the money on both of those deals, but that's about $30 million for the 2026 season, between those two players that would come off the books in that scenario. And who knows what the returns in terms of prospects or MLB-ready talent would be for the Mets for those two players. But the NL East is getting better. The NL East is getting better. There is no chance that the New York Mets could not have done this 3-year deal for Robert Suarez. There is no excuse. There really isn't. And I know some people are going to talk about, well, Pete Fairbanks is on the market still. First of all, at the very beginning, he was always option and plan C. Diaz was plan A. And I'm talking about after the Devin Williams signing, because I understand that this was a safety net. The Devin Williams signing was a safety net in case Diaz left. But we were led to believe by all the reports saying that they were going to go after a closer even after Diaz left. And so for this deal to happen, this is a steal of a contract, by the way. There are no deferrals, but you're telling me Robert Suarez and Devin Williams are getting paid the same amount. They basically got the same contract, and then the Mets had to give Devin Williams a $6 million signing bonus. So you're talking about 3 for 50 up, 3 for 45 for Robert Suarez with the details that I have right now in front of me. That's egregious. And I'm not saying that Robert Suarez would have, solved all the bullpen issues, because there are still other question marks within this bullpen that the Mets need to address, but that would have been in the front end. You would have had the back end solidified, all ready to go. And then you would have to worry about the front end with maybe re-signing a guy like Tyler Rogers, who I am in favor of bringing back. Jeff Passan is saying right here, again, this is an instant reaction. I'm sure more details are going to come about. Between Robert Suarez and Raisel Iglesias, Atlanta now has 2 of the 5 relievers with the most saves over the last 2 seasons. Great. Fantastic. Fantastic. And we've got Devin Williams, who would have been a great setup guy with the way that he ended his 2025 season, but showed an inability to save ball games consistently in New York last season. With the healthy Chris Sale, Schwellenbach, and Spencer Strider, plus a full season of Waldrop, their pitching could take a huge leap. Yeah, all across the board. That is a team that has a competent rotation when fully healthy, especially those top 3. And now they have a really good bullpen to lock down ball games if their lineup stays healthy. Of course, they are, I don't know if they're going to re-sign Ozuna, who's a free agent for them as well. He's coming off of a monstrous season, but the Braves are not going to roll over and die in the division like they did in 2025. They got off to an abysmal start. They were plagued by injuries, and even still, the New York Mets couldn't take advantage of that. And they handed the division away to the Phillies. This is disastrous. So now so with the current bullpen of the New York Mets and the personnel that we have, AJ Minter is not going to be ready for the beginning of the season. I think Stearns has already explicitly stated that. Best case scenario, if things go smoothly, he stated that AJ Minter will be back sometime in May, hopefully early May. You're looking at Brooks Raley as your setup guy right now to Devin Williams. You're probably talking about Christian Scott being in the bullpen as well, unless there's something drastic that happens with the starting rotation. And a spoiler alert, I will release a video on my channel at 4 p.m. giving you all an update and my take on the Tariq Skubal rumors that are going out there, because if you haven't been paying attention, there is a lot of smoke surrounding the Dodgers also going out there and acquiring Tariq Skubal. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's all factual, but there's a lot of rumors from a lot of different sources stating that they are prepared to make some sort of offer for Skubal. And that would basically make the 2026 MLB season unwatchable. But can you blame the Dodgers? They are in the driver's seat of anybody that they want to get, because they go out there and they make it happen. So the rest of the bullpen, you've got Huascar Brazaban. Reed Garrett is not going to be available, if I'm not mistaken. He's got Tommy John surgery that he needs to recover from. You've got Dylan Ross, who we saw at the tail end get the call up in 2025, but as a wild card, we have no idea what he's going to bring us. Again, we're talking about another position group that is all question marks. That is all question marks for the Mets. Christian Scott. I think Christian Scott ends up in the bullpen. I think he ramps up, and if they like what they see, if they need help in the rotation, then I think they move him at some point mid-season to the rotation. but he's going to start off in the bullpen. I don't think Stearns has explicitly stated that, but I can see that being the situation. Minter's not going to be ready for the beginning of the season. That's already documented by Stearns, and Brooks Raley will be ready. So, like I said, with the way that it's currently constructed, Raley and Devin Williams are your 8-9 punch. Huascar Brazaban is your 7th inning guy, I guess. And who knows what happens. You can get a Tyler Rogers. He could be also your 7th inning guy. I don't know. But it's not as strong. The one thing that I do know is that it's not as strong as it could have been with a Devin Williams, Edwin Diaz punch, or at least a Devin Williams, Robert Suarez punch. Brutal. It's brutal. I hope there's more details that come out about this. I'm not going to be on here for an hour stream, talking about Robert Suarez. So don't expect that. I'm here to just break some of the news and give you all my frustrations, and I share the same frustrations as you all. I really do. Strike says seats will be empty by June. Joel's saying just rebuild. And this is the other portion too, because I've thrown out this idea that, Stearns has this 2 to 3 year reset plan. And by reset, you can essentially say that it's a rebuild. It's a quiet rebuild that the Mets are showing us that they're going down that path, right? Because, yeah, we're talking about guys like Ramon Laureano, who has 1 year left on his deal. We're talking about a guy like, Wilson Contreras, who's got 2 guaranteed years left. And then you're talking about phasing those guys out, putting together a competent roster with those guys, losing out on Nimmo, not losing out on because you let him go willingly and by your own doing, losing out on Pete Alonso, losing out on Edwin Diaz, and then we're getting these guys that are on 1 or 2 year deals in order to phase them out next, to have these prospects come up and develop at the major league level in order to be the supplemental pieces to Juan Soto in the end. And where does Lindor fit in this equation? Where does he fit in? Because this guy's not getting any younger, right? He's 32 going on 33. And if you have this 2 to 3 year plan, that means Lindor is going to be 34, 35 years old. Unbelievable. And that's the very reason why I do not think the Mets are going to offload Francisco Lindor this offseason. I don't. I hope that that's not even the case next offseason. But if David Stearns is trying to play the long game, you might as well just try to get any sort of assets and just offload that contract to whoever is willing to give you something of value in return. It could be like a Nimmo 2.0 deal. And it sucks to say because you made the trade way back when to get Lindor as your cornerstone shortstop and build around him. And you finally got Pete Alonso, Lindor on the same team, and you finally got Juan Soto, and they're it all down immediately. Like, I understand shaking up the and I think that it was necessary, but this is a whole different ballgame. This is a whole different ballgame. This is like uncharted territories of what David Stearns is doing right now. And where is Steve Cohen in all this? Does he even care? Because I saw that report that he texted John Heyman in the New York Post saying he understands the fans' reactions, but there's a long offseason left. I don't get it. I don't get it. But it's very clear that Steve Cohen has taken a step back and a back seat to David Stearns as it relates to the whole roster construction of what the Mets got going on in next season and the season after that. I mean, there's a lot of these reporters. This is how I know it's not happening. This is how I know the Mets aren't even going to pivot to Cody Bellinger is that, what was the first thing we heard? Kyle Schwarber, Mets pivot. Easiest thing, go and re-sign Pete Alonso. Nope. Don't even offer him a contract. So now reporters are talking about pivoting to Cody Bellinger, who's also going to want a 5-year deal. Knowing what Schwarber got, knowing what Pete Alonso got, Bellinger's not going to be asking for anything less than 5. Some team would be so lucky, incredibly lucky, no matter if you think he's worth it or not, to get him on a 4-year deal. But I'm sure there's some team that will offer him 5, especially with the other 2 names off the board. We also have Kyle Tucker out there. The Mets have been reportedly interested in Kyle Tucker as well. Does anybody have any confidence that the New York Mets are going to make a big move and go out there and splurge on a big contract for either of those names? The same Kyle Tucker that is going to want a 7 or 8 year deal. It's not happening. And I would love to be wrong. I would absolutely love to be wrong, but it's not happening. Zach says, I don't see them full on rebuilding. Doesn't make sense to spend the money they have on Soto to do that. I think they understand that with that Soto deal, he is not going to opt out. This is my thinking process, is that once they signed Juan Soto, they knew that they had a 15-year window with him. And really, when you're talking about him in his prime, you're talking about just maybe 6 to 7 years of winning something with him. You failed miserably in his first season, to no fault of his own, to no fault of Pete Alonso's, and to no fault of many players that really performed well last season. Starting rotation fell apart, bullpen fell apart right thereafter, and when the offense finally started to pick up, the season was gone. And I really do think that they understand that Juan Soto, even though he has the opt-out, there is no chance that he is going to go on the open market when, let's take a look at this Juan Soto contract. And because I've seen this crazy notion that Mets fans really think this guy, unless the Mets are so disastrous that he says, I'm sick of this and I want to win. I don't even care if I lose out on all the money that I held out for to get from the Mets, which I don't think it's going to be. That's not going to be the case. Unless that happens, this guy's not opting out. This is a deal you do not opt out of and risk losing millions and millions of dollars on, right? So he has an opt-out the 5th year in 2030 when he's age 31. If he opts out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons left, that would pay him to age 40, $46 million a season. Do you think he's opting out? Which team is going to give him something of equivalence of a 9-year, whatever 46 times 9 is, deal on the open market? And that's where the Mets are comfortable with retooling, resetting, rebuilding, whatever term you want to use, that's why they're comfortable doing so, because they get to phase out these guys that have not won as a core for 6 seasons now, and they get to get the young prospects coming up. Carson Bench, all the pitchers that we saw come up at the tail end of 2025, Jet Williams. All I'm saying is this: I know that ESPN at the end of the 2025 season had the New York Mets farm system ranked number 1 in all of baseball. Dodgers were number 2 as a reference, as it relates to Tariq Skubal. But these guys better pan out, man. These guys better pan out. Because as I always say this, right? I'm fine on prospects coming up and making a difference. I really am. I'm all for it. I think a real good team needs a blend of veteran leadership and prospects and young guys that are willing to play the demanding positions like center field, like Carson Bench might be able to do next season. But you can't be trotting out unknowns in almost every position. That is not feasible. It's not a good plan. It's a huge risk. And there's no guarantee that Jet Williams and Carson Bench come up and in year 1, they perform lights out. I always say this: how long did it take Brett Beatty to finally show that he is worth something, right? That he is worth to prioritize at third base potentially of the future. He came up at the tail end of what, 2022? I know he's been plagued by injuries and that doesn't help, but it's been a while since he has come up to the major leagues and finally has shown us something that is worthwhile. So that's like where my mind's at. And then this is not even a conversation of what do you do with guys like Mark Vientos and Ronnie Mauricio, who are also MLB ready. They're not prospects anymore. They're MLB ready. They've shown what they can at the major league level. But are we really bought into those guys either? Because I'm not. If you're telling me that Mark Vientos is going into 2026 as your DH, yeah, fans should not show up to Citi Field. I'm sorry. I don't care what he did in 2024. I do not care. That is showing that you are punting on the season. It is. And I really want to buy into this Stearns plan. I really want to buy into the fact that he has a plan and that he's going to get this right. And you know what? With the Dodgers and what they're doing, if it takes 2 to 3 years, let them have their championships, whatever. But be honest that that's the plan. Like, be honest with us. Because this roster is not even close. Not even close. Not even the same stratosphere of what the Dodgers got going on right now. And even with the names left on the market, even if they have an A+ from here on out, an A+ offseason, this roster is still not going to compete with the Dodgers. And this is a good point too. And I'm not naive to this fact. This is a good point. Took the Dodgers almost a decade to build what they are right now. That is correct. That is correct. But a lot of fans, like myself included, wonder why you make that investment for Juan Soto if that is the overall mindset of let's wait. I'm not saying it's going to take the whole 11 years for the Mets, but I'm saying 2, 3, 4, 5 years that you are looking down the line. Why even make that pitch to Juan Soto? To sell more tickets? To help fund the casino? Because we haven't really talked about the casino thing, and I don't really want to talk about the casino thing because that's not really like baseball related, but that's something that our owner here is directly tied into and invested in while he's taking the back seat to the actual roster construction. And I get it. Stearns was brought in here because he is the baseball mastermind, the baseball roster construction guru, supposedly, is what we were all under the assumption of when he first joined the Mets. But this is disastrous, man. This is disastrous. I'm just reading some of the Mets fans' comments under the SNY post on X talking about the Robert Suarez deal to the Braves. Fans are not happy. Fans are not happy. You just jumped in ticket sales after you complained about it. Coming off of an NLCS appearance, you failed. The fans showed up. And you said, you know what? Screw that. We're just going to tear it all down. I don't get it. So I appreciate you all being here again, 1:35 p.m. here on the East Coast. Again, smash the thumbs up buttons on this stream. I wish I could even contemplate and come up with some sort of plan of what's going on here, but I don't. Oh, Rob tweeted something. Let me take a look at what Rob tweeted. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back because at midnight, the night before Pete Alonso signed with the Orioles, I literally told everybody, get prepared for Alonso to the Orioles 5 years. It just reeked of that situation. What has Rob got going on here? Shout out to Rob, by the way. Are the Mets even trying this year? He paid Williams 3 for 51, and Suarez gets less money and is 10 times better than he is. Make sense. It's not wrong. I don't understand how you come away with the lesser reliever for $6 million more. Now, listen, I still think Devin Williams will be good for the Mets. I think he will definitely bounce back compared to the production values of what he posted last season with the Yankees. I'm not saying he won't, but it's a risk to bank on. It really is, especially with some of the other names that you could have supplemented him with. And when he first signed, he said he had other offers to close baseball games predominantly, like off the bat, no questions. Devin Williams is the closer. And the Mets did not guarantee him that. So let's see if there's any other reports here. So NL East gets better. NL East gets a lot better. Let's see. Mets Suarez. Mets. I don't know if the Mets gave Suarez an offer or not. I have no idea. Bet you Jeremy Hefner is happy about that now that he's in the Braves organization. Bet you he is happy about that. And this is all full circle, by the way, right? Because the report that we saw when Edwin Diaz left is that he felt a little bit disrespected that the Mets didn't even call him before they signed Devin Williams. And he also wasn't a fan of the fact that they let go of Jeremy Hefner. Those were also two factors that went into Edwin Diaz's decision. Now, I'm not going to even rehash, the back and forth that Rob and I had about Edwin Diaz because I still remain true to what I said. And I don't think that Edwin Diaz left in the most noble way. But you lose Hefner. You potentially lose your closer because of it. You lose your first base coach. A lot of people are not happy. It's not just us fans that are realizing what's going on with this organization. These players are also understanding that some of these coaches, they were the scapegoats. They were the scapegoats. They were. Who built that rotation? It was David Stearns. Who got the blame? All the coaches that were fired. Who will get the blame if the 2026 Mets, who are seemingly punting on a season, don't perform? Carlos Mendoza is going to be the next one on his way out. So how many dominoes have to fall before we hold David Stearns accountable? This is coming from one of David Stearns' biggest supporters ever since he entered this organization is me. That's me. All the streams, all the back and forth that I have and have had with Rob talking about David Stearns has a plan. He'll trade the prospects if a deal comes and that he likes. Haven't seen it. How many people will we blame for this organization's failure before we blame David Stearns? Who, albeit, in all fairness, inherited a roster that was not his and is 2 to 3 years into his tenure, or will be at least. How much time are we willing to give this guy to see this plan come to fruition? Because he must have had a very nice, well laid out PowerPoint in front of Steve Cohen and Alex Cohen to convince them to sit back and watch this all unfold. I don't know if he created it himself. I don't know if he had help from like an assistant or something. But I need to take a 101 course of the PowerPoint that was presented to the Cohens to have this happen. So, Michael King, Wilson Contreras, I guess those are the options of what we're working with. Under different circumstances, those are great supplemental pieces. Those are great supplemental pieces. As the main targets of your potential rest of your offseason, that is not moving me. That is not going to move the Phillies when they look down on your roster, or the Braves for that matter. So, And I understand this too, Zach. Like, I get it. You know, he didn't inherit the rotation either with the names that you have here. And by the way, David Peterson would not be surprised if he's on his way out either. You know, he has potential as like a number 4, but we all know he's never going to live up to anything of a top 2 pitcher in the rotation. He's had flashes of brilliance and he falls off a cliff like he did in 2025. He's an inconsistent pitcher. And he's a rental now because he's in his last year of arbitration before you have to give him a deal. Don't think David Stearns is going to give him a deal that he wants. And I agree with this, but when you have a guy that comes in here, Zach, and has Luis Severino and banks on Luis Severino to turn it around, he did. Sean Manaea turns it around, he did. The contract because of it. Griffin Canning comes in here on a 1-year deal. I get it. He performed really well before he went down with the Achilles injury. Frankie Montas was arguably the worst signing of maybe MLB history, but definitely under any David Stearns tenure in any organization. Like that's not the way you build a rotation. And I get it. As soon as David Stearns walked into this organization, he was looking at the prospects in the farm system and said, I just want to stay afloat until McLean, Tong, and Sproat get here, and then we get to start cooking. Well, let's start cooking, David Stearns, because they're here. They will be here in 2026. So let's start cooking. I don't understand, what are we waiting around and just waiting for people to fall into our laps? Now, I'm not saying David Stearns doesn't have a big trade coming up his sleeve. He very well could. But is he going to trade the prospects necessary, or does he really rely on this farm system moving forward? That's the question. That's the question. Dolo, where are you seeing that the Mets didn't make an offer to Suarez? I believe it. I'm just curious because I haven't seen it. Where are you seeing that? Who tweeted that out? Peralta or Ryan? Peralta's going to be a rental as well. He's going to be demanding a Dylan Cease type deal, which I'm sure David Stearns and the connection with Peralta and Milwaukee will give him. Nolan McLean is going to have to prove that he's going to be a consistent ace in this rotation for the entirety of his rookie season in 2026. So, I mean, I would love Peralta. This is my thing. This is, if the Mets don't make something happen drastically, why would you trade for rental pitchers? If you are not going to go after the cream of the crop in terms of the bats on the market and the relievers, like, why are you trading for rental pitchers that are going to, command 2 to 3 top prospects in your farm system? To save face? Like, if you are going to commit to not putting the best roster out in 2026, commit to that. Commit to that. If you want to sell us on these prospects, Jonah Tong having a huge leap and taking a huge step forward in 2026, fine. But don't save face by then, trading away prospects for a rental pitcher when you have no rotation behind them. Well, not behind them, but you have no offense to supplement that. And then you have relievers that you should have had in the door that are not. No, Peralta is a free agent after the 2026 season. He's got no control left after this year. He's a rental, and so is Skubal. That's why those trades are not happening. And let me just confirm before I speak on it. I mean, I've talked about Peralta many times. I'm just confirming for my own knowledge. Yeah. Club option exercised. It was the second club option. $8 million is the payroll hit. Unrestricted free agent after the season. It makes no sense. Commit to the plan. That's it. That's all I got to say. 40 minutes on the stream. What about Brandon Woodruff? What about him? I know they have Brandon Woodruff. I know that they're probably going to trade Peralta. I get it. Are you saying to inquire about Brandon Woodruff? Think he accepted the QO qualifying offer from the Brewers. So that's $22 million on their books of 1 year left of Brandon Woodruff too, who would also be a rental. Shoulder injury type of guy. Yeah, $22 million unrestricted free agent in 2027 is Brandon Woodruff. So I agree with this comment, actually. Stearns has never once traded away a top prospect for a big fish. This isn't a retool, it's a rebuild. Stearns wants a playoff team under $245 million. And it's going to be, and thank you for the super chat, by the way. I definitely appreciate that. It's a good comment. It's going to be hard to get under that 245, like you just said, or 243. Is it 245? I thought it was anywhere 243, 244, 245, one of those numbers. It's going to be hard to get there. Because that would practically mean that you have to offload McNeil and Senga and then just do nothing the rest of the offseason in free agency or take on any other money. So it's going to be really hard to get under that mark. So I don't think that's realistic, but I agree with you in that this is a silent rebuild. This is, on the surface, getting a guy like Marcus Semien, a veteran that maybe has more to offer with his bat, but has a lot to offer defensively, right? Just remaining competitive enough to phase these guys out in the next 2 to 3 seasons before you can fully commit to the youth movement alongside Juan Soto. This is a silent rebuild until I see otherwise. And I'll keep saying it. And I'll keep saying it. Where are we at on the payroll penalty charts? Let's see. I think it's the same thing as what they were at after Devin Williams signed. Fangraphs. This is going to be the last thing before I head out of here. Fangraphs. I need some water. Mets payroll. Let's take a look at this. It's a good question. I still think it's 277 because they haven't made a damn move outside of that Devin Williams deal that they just made. So, yeah. So 277.9. It might as well be 278 is the luxury tax payroll estimate because you got to take into account arbitration values, this, that, and the other. 278. Now let's look up MLB luxury tax 2026. The figures, the threshold is $244 million. That is the top of the line before you start to accrue taxes, right? The surcharges. Let's see here. So every 20, 40, 60 million dollars you go over is the next tier. So $20 million over would be 264. And they're at 278. So they could get under that first apron, but they still wouldn't be under the 244. So that's where we're at. We are, I'm trying to think of how to word this. We are $14 million away from the first surcharge threshold, if that makes any sense. That makes any sense. Hopefully I'm explaining that correctly. Which is crazy to think that we're even talking about this because, again, we were laughing at Yankees fans saying that, oh, Steinbrenner's going cheap. You guys are trying to, reduce payroll. Well, you know what? They were honest about it. David Stearns and Steve Cohen have not been quite as honest about it. But that's what's happening here, potentially. And I hate to make that assumption, but what are we as fans supposed to do when this is happening right in front of our very eyes? All right, this is a report coming from Ben Nicholson-Smith of Sportsnet. Heard Blue Jays and Mets were checking in regularly on Robert Suarez, but didn't make formal offers because Atlanta moved quickly, landing one of the top relievers available for $45 million. Mets only, this is per John Heyman, a little bit more reliable. Mets only discussed concepts with Robert Suarez. They apparently weren't anxious to pay more than they paid Williams. Oh my goodness. Suarez ultimately got $45 million from the Braves. Williams deals total $51 million, about $44 million considering the deferrals that Williams got. That's egregious. So that basically tells you that David Stearns thinks that Devin Williams is still better than Robert Suarez. That's essentially what that tells me. Mets never made a formal offer. Dolo, you are correct. So thank you for bringing that up a couple minutes ago. John Heyman tweeted this out 6 minutes ago. They discussed concepts. The Braves moved quickly, and the Mets were not anxious to pay more than what they paid for Williams. So you might as well have just said it's Edwin Diaz or bust if, after you sign Devin Williams. It's Edwin Diaz or bust. That's essentially what happened. All I can do is shake my head. All I can do is shake my head. So, all right, Mets fans. That's it from me. That's it from me. I don't think I have anything else to say. I think I've discussed my frustrations enough here. A little bit longer than I was anticipating to. So, again, I appreciate it. Robert Suarez on the move to a division rival. NL East keeps getting better. Marlins are up and coming. The Nationals, really, they're going to be trading off pieces. Not worried about them, but the Mets, who knows where they go? Who knows where they go? I'll be discussing a Three Scooble update at 4 p.m. on the channel. Tune in to all the previous content. Definitely appreciate it. Make sure to smash those thumbs up buttons and subscribe to the channel. Hopefully you like these off-season live streams, hot stoves, and standalone videos as we try to piece what possibly could be the plan for the Mets moving forward. Frustrating times. Hopefully David Stearns and Steve Cohen are not just going to sit back and let things happen to the Mets while all these teams in the NL are getting better. But that's what it's looking like right now. So I'll catch you all later on the next streamer video. And hopefully you all have a good day. See you all later. Peace.